Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for making time to come join me, talk about, as you can see from the title slide, Reimagining Business Processes with Joule Agents. I'm Walter Sun, and I lead the AI product engineering team at SAP. So just to give you, put everyone on the same page, I just want to share a high-level diagram of what we do in business AI at SAP. I'll start bottoms up. At the bottom is applications. For those of you now familiar with SAP, we have products across all lines of businesses, like human capital management, we have SuccessFactors. For travel, we have Concur. For procurement, we have Ariba. And then for ERP, we have S4, which is used by most of the Fortune 500 companies. All this is supported with embedded AI features. And so we build features that come out of the box. If you get business OCR, you get document understanding when you scan a receipt for Concur, that comes from AI. That's kind of embedded in all the solutions. What we've done is we've gone a step beyond that, and I'll talk about that today with Joule. Above that, first of all, is the data layer. We have a product called the Business Data Cloud. This product is to allow you to bring all your data to one place, and by virtue of it being in the same place, allows you to get insights across all your lines of businesses at one place. And above that is all the AI that we built on top. So Joule, as I mentioned, is our AI co-pilot, if you're not familiar with that. And the idea with Joule is that it connects with natural language to each of your business processes. And the beauty of that is it makes it quick and easy for new hires. Let's say if a new hire at your company and you use SAP, they can use natural language to execute without needing to understand the OS very well or the UX very well. And so for instance, if you say, you join and you want to take a vacation for the holidays, it's December now, say, I want to take like 3 days of vacation before Christmas, you can do that with natural language in Joule, and it goes into SuccessFactors and makes that change for you, rather than you understanding where you need to go. So that actually is kind of the first step of Joule, natural language to processes, right, and actions. Beyond that, is agents, and agents is a big topic. You heard Matt Garman talk a lot about this morning. We'll talk more about it today as well, and how we are using it at SAP. But with that, each of the lines of business, as you see here, finance, procurement, supply chain, each of them have agents that you can interact with. The additional value is that these agents can interact across different lines of businesses, and that's kind of the value add of having SAP having applications across all lines. For instance, if you are, let's say, a business person and you wanted to figure out how to book a trip to visit your top clients, you would have to access your CRM tool, which we have a product called CX. And then once you find that information, you would actually go to a travel tool, which would be Concur. And so with multi-agent communication, you can do all that in one place. And I'll talk a little bit about how all that works. But I'll first kind of mention like the motivation, right? We all talk about agents, everyone talks about agents. How do we motivate this topic in case you're not convinced this is valuable? If you go 15 years ago, or maybe even 10 years ago, you might go on a trip. Let's say you're in LA, you want to come to reInvent in Vegas. You want to travel, you get a map, or you might go to AAA, your local travel company, and say, give me a map and an itinerary for how to go from LA to Las Vegas. Let me go through Palm Springs or whatever. And you go through this detailed map, and then you get it all figured out like a week before, and then you leave, like say Monday, come here, right? Yesterday, come here. What you do also, this is the same thing you do with applications. In the past, as I mentioned, if you want to book I'll use this example again and again. If you want to visit your top customers, you actually would first find out who they are. So you go to your CRM tool, you find out who they are, and then you say, okay, you talk to your administrator, somebody, or a travel agent, say, I need to actually book trips to these locations. How will I make it work, right? So the idea is you plan ahead, and then you execute, right? With agents, you can actually do it basically real time, the same way you do travel now with GPS, right? So you go on, let's say if you were in LA and you wanted to come to Las Vegas, you would probably not even need to spend days and days planning. You would just say, I'll put in my GPS, we'll see what happens. And that's not actually even worse. It's actually even better than it was 10, 15 years ago, because 10, 15 years ago, you planned it 2 weeks ago, and then let's say a road closes like over Thanksgiving. You don't know that, you get stuck, right? GPS gives you real-time traffic, real-time conditions, and it can readjust you the same way. By the same token, this example I gave you for agents, maybe 2 weeks ago, you figured out who your top 5 customers are. Customers A, B, C, and D. And you also want to bring a couple of your colleagues along, Jane and John. But by the time you travel, maybe John's transferred to a different division. Maybe one of your top 5 customers is out of town. Maybe customer A happens to be at reInvent and they can't meet with you. So you actually have the ability to use agents to dynamically also adapt to the needs as well. So it's the analogy I like is basically, we all know how we did maps before and how we do maps now. For many of you who haven't started using agents, you do a lot of things manually now, piece by piece. In the future, you can use agents to do them all together, and also dynamically in a way that actually is optimal as well. And so the question is, why are agents special? I think the first thing is this idea of reasoning. A lot of people aren't super comfortable with the idea that machines or systems can reason, right? But the reality is that having this ability brings a lot more power. The same idea, if you hire, I use the analogy that agents are like junior assistants that you hire. You hire a college graduate. The first few days or few months they're on a job, you don't want them to think on their own too much because it's risky and things can happen. So you tell them what to do and you follow them closely, right? But after time, you let them do their own thing. And so the idea is that you let them reason later. Initially, you don't let them reason at all, right? And this is the same with machines. In the past, we don't let them reason. We just say, here's task A, task B, task C, complete that, right? A, give me a list of top customers. I have that. B, given these customers, find me flights to these locations, right? Now you can say, these agents can actually reason and say, if you want to know who your top customers are, you want to visit them, you can contact a travel agent, which is Concur for us. And beyond that, these agents also can reason about what's logical. I'm not going to book 4 trips to Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, and Miami the same day because it's not logical, right? These systems have learned basic logic of mapping and locations, and these type of things can help you apply logic and get the right answer. And this is just an easy example of visually geo mapping, but this actually works in complex business processes as well. These models are trained on so much data and so much information that you know what's logical, what's logical. If you want to, let's say, buy a ton of inventory from Asia over Black Friday and ship it and get it ready for the holidays, the system will tell you in the past, other companies have tried this, it's not worked out too well, right? It takes much more longer because weather conditions are worse in the fall, late fall. People are all buying inventory at that time. So basically, these systems can help correct errors that you don't know. And the idea is that it can plan, it can also take action as well. And all of this is kind of the new age of what's happening, and it makes it a lot easier for us to get things done. And so I talked a little bit about what we do, but the very first slide, I gave a quick overview of the application layer, the data layer, and the Joule agents. But I think the point I guess I want to talk about at the top is that these agents iterate around themselves, and we also have analytics agents as well. These analytics agents can analyze how your agents are performing, making sure you do better. We have RPA agents to help you automate as well. We have also system trigger agents that you can follow rules so that these aren't reactive agents, but they're proactive as well, meaning that you can say, hey, whenever I get an email from our CEO, do X, Y, and Z, versus like wait for you to use Joule or use your chat window to make a request. And so the idea also, as I mentioned before, that because we have all lines of businesses, you can actually build agents across all lines. You have data across all lines of businesses, so the systems understand all of that. And by having that full context, you get a lot more done. And beyond that, suppose you have your own, let's say an old org chart app that you built 25, 30 years ago. We have Joule Studio that lets you extend and build up on top of what's in our system. So the idea is that you can extend what's available and still use Joule to access more than just what's in SAP. And all of this happens, this is just an example, like how you can apply questions that actually can answer very specific things in your company. Show me my sales reps by revenue. And so you get these top 5 sales reps. Obviously, if you ask a large language model this, public model, you're not going to get any information like this because there's no information about your company, right? So all of this is carefully grounded in your data. And that's an important part. I mean, I think you understand what grounding is, but the idea that a language model is trained on public data, but not all data you have is public. Models aren't run real time, so you need grounding that gives you real-time data, right? If you ask about what happened in today's keynote from Matt Garman, you need a model that has some grounding of news that can get that information. You also need, for your company, grounded information that's private. You have your, let's say, the most common thing I talk about is your vacation policy. Every company has a different policy, and yours is even different from your colleagues based on how long you've been there, right? So basically, it needs to be grounded in what the company policies are, and it also needs to be grounded in your profile. And all that information is provided automatically in Joule. So now I'll talk about basically our vision and goals for agents. It's basically 3-pronged. The first thing is we want to make sure that there are agents available to you out of the box. So we want to empower you with pre-built agents. But as I mentioned, you might not have everything you need already out of the box. You might have something you want to use yourself. So we're democratizing the ability for you to develop your own agents and plug them into the system. That's the second mission. And then the third mission is that we're also not restricting you to the SAP ecosystem. We know that you may have other product providers, like we're here with AWS at reInvent. You might use agent space or other technologies. And so the idea is that you would actually, we have this technology we apply with agent to agent that lets you work across agent technologies. And so I'll talk about that as our third mission. So starting with the first mission, we have pre-built agents. And so we've now 25 agents are available already in production. and we have 15 more going to production by end of the year, end of this month. And so you can sort of see a list of them. You have things like accounts receivable, dispute resolution. And as I mentioned, many of these are system triggered. Dispute resolution, you don't want to go to the machine and say, what disputes do I have? Rather, if a dispute happens, it comes in by email, you want to be alerted by it, right? So we use agents that are system triggered as well, that can act proactively to you and your needs. And I'll show two examples. One is a catalog optimization agent. A lot of people who are in retail have a catalog of the inventory of items. But these inventory items update every day, right? You might have a new version of a product. You might sell out of a product. You might want to transition product A to product B, equivalent. And the whole idea behind this is that it's very difficult to do this manually. And so a catalog optimization agent is an agent that helps you update in real time what's happening based off of your incoming orders and outgoing sales. And so we found that by using this agent, people are reducing time to translate catalog data by 70%. And we also found that people are spending 65% less time maintaining assets. And you can imagine that's the case for a retail company, if any of you are in that business. The other example is basically accounting accruals. Accruals is the idea that there's something that's kind of billed, but something that's building up, but you haven't been billed yet. Like you have a credit card bill you pay every month. During the month, you accrue charges, right, which you can see. But in some cases, you can't see quite as readily. For instance, an example that you may see is electricity. Your electricity bill, you use electricity at home every day, and at the end of the month or so, you get billed. And typically, you can assume it's linear, but as the weather gets colder in the fall, you might use more electricity. And so basically, having an agent that helps you understand your policy, understanding historical transactions, and using that to extrapolate what your numbers are, quite valuable. And I'll show you a demonstration for this. But just to show you, customers have used this and found 80% time reduction in calculating the accruals, and a 50% reduction in time to review the amounts and posting the entries. So I'll show you an example. This is actually the accruals agent in action. And so there's two unprocessed accruals here. And let me just show you the first one. This one, you look into this video, and I'm trying to keep it more interactive by showing a few demos. Right here, you're saying, I have this one item that's not paid, not accrued yet. I want to know what it is. And so you can sort of see the reasoning. The reasoning tells you what it's been told. In the system, and I'll show you in a minute, the workflow says, go to your policy documents and figure out how we do accruals. And the way we do accruals is two things. One is you extrapolate based on number of days, but you also have a year-over-year adjustment. And so that basically this accruals agent does that. And you see the flow chart here. And you see the flow chart here, as you look below, is accounting policy handbook at the very bottom, the first thing. And over here, you have the posted accruals as well. So basically, you have your company policy as rounding. You have your posted actual accruals. And you take the actual accruals, your policy, and the rules, and come up with a new number, right? And this is kind of the recommendation. And if you're happy with the recommendation, you just say, OK, and you're done. Obviously, you always have human in the loop. So if you're not happy with the number, you can always adjust it. But it tells you with transparency how it came up with the 6325 number. Now, beyond just doing the math, you can see this other case of like looking and solving more difficult problems. This one has an error. You see the red box on top. And the problem is there's no cost center applied to this particular example. So what you want to do is say, OK, let me use Joule, which is our AI copilot, and ask and find out what is the cost center. This happens to me a lot myself, for real. People say, hey, Walter, can I use your cost center for something? And I have a cost center, but I don't know off the top of my head. Joule knows what it is. You say, hey, help me solve this problem. This particular one doesn't have a cost center. And immediately Joule says, I recommend you use the cost center for this value. And this value is potentially your cost center. And you say, yes, do you want to do this or no? Again, you're in charge. And once you say yes, you actually get it applied. And then it says, OK, now that I have it applied, everything else is fine. Should I post this accrual? And you say yes, you go ahead and you're done. And so we saw two cases we just talked about of the accruals agent. One is following company policy. The other is actually fixing an error that was in the system. So that's kind of just two examples of how you can use the accruals agent. And so the value of this, as I mentioned, is proactive alerting, right? You are alerted in this example, and over a course of 2 or 3 minutes, we just did this together. We figured out how to solve a couple of cases. So you're proactively alerted of issues. Maybe you have 1,000 different cases, only 2 at an issue. You can automate these tasks. As you can sort of see, a lot of this work is automated. And finally, it augments your business decision making, right? It helps you decide and fix problems quickly rather than requiring you to read through the case every time. If you can imagine, as I mentioned, I don't know if you have the same problem, but if you're asked to add your cost center every time, like 1 time a week, you do that look up information 50 times a year. A system can do that very quickly. And this is one simple example of how it works. So basically, that's kind of using the agent for business process. You can also, as I mentioned earlier, use agents to improve your processes. And so we have Signavio, which lets you understand how your businesses are running. And so we have an agent, Agent Mining in Signavio, It's a tracing agent for decisions and actions. It flags bottlenecks, determines if you're not compliant, and it also monitors and optimizes the value. So this is basically a workflow that lets you evaluate the processing of how your agents are doing. So I think one thing I just want to say is that we have 5 main processes or principles for agent development. One is you want to design for business outcomes. We don't want to design agents that you never use, right? We want to find agents that you need the most. And so we talk to customers, and you can also tell me and or anyone you know from SAP, like what agents do you need built for our products? And that helps us bring value to you. Accelerating time to value. This is the whole idea that a lot of things are very arduous at work. How do you make sure you get things done more and more quickly? Streamlining the engagement through Joule. This is the point I showed you earlier in this demo where you actually are using Joule and engaging very quickly with accruals and other things without having to go through the UX, taking many, many steps. Reinforcing human trust and accountability. This is important, right? Responsible AI and AI ethics are a big key part of any kind of AI work, and it's the same with AI agents. You saw in the process when we talked about accruals, we gave rules as to how we decided on the 63.25 euros, right? It said, hey, extrapolate the number of days, but also take an increase of X% every year because of inflation or cost of goods, right? And so we have full accountability and you have full trust in terms of how we're actually providing the answers to you through these systems. And lastly, I mentioned the word democratizing development. This is kind of the second principle, and it kind of segues. Our 5th principle is basically how do we make it easier for you to use and access agents. So the first part was accessing out-of-the-box agents. That's hopefully easy and fast to use. If you haven't tried it, please try it out. The second thing is saying, hey, look, I actually have my own needs, but you didn't satisfy them. You showed me the 40 agents, but I don't really want to, I need something else. And so we can let you extend and build and also share that information to other people. And that's doable through this product called Joule Studio. In Joule Studio, and I'll show you another demo here, you actually are taking, the third box is AI agent and Joule Skills Builder. And so basically you use Joule Studio to create a project. And you can sort of see here, you want to actually, and in a matter of 2 minutes, you can actually build this agent. And so the idea is you say, okay, create an AI agent, and then you type in what you want it for. Logistics agent is the one I'm showing you here. How do I create a logistics agent? Well, you give an explanation, and that's basically the prompting you give to the LLM on the left-hand side, saying this is how you should do it. And for logistics agents, we need to actually collect information about what packages you're looking for, and then you need to give me we'll give them details about what the status of the package. And so you need to add documents, and this here shows you how you can add the right information. Let's say shippers, you need to get the input from shippers, and then you create some skills. And what I have here is basically a transportation skill where you see a flow chart here that's being built. And in this flow chart, we need to add different components, right? And so for each component, we talk about what inputs do you have. That was the first thing you did. I know it's going kind of fast, but the goal is basically, the short of it is you get the inputs, basically the packages that are coming in, and the outputs that you want. And once you get the output, you also want to figure out like, where do you get information from here? And this is transportation processes. This transportation process looks up externally the status of different packages. Like if you go to your shipper, FedEx, DHL, whatever, look up the status. And after you fetch the status, you also want to report it back. So you create this confirmation message, and this message is customizable by you as well. And you type in the format you want, and now you have your flow. Once the flow is completed, you can actually double check and test it out, which is what I'll show you here. You do a test, and you can say using Joule again, and it says, this is a test case. This is looking at a Joule test of logistics, and you ask, find the best carrier for urgent product. And it says, give me some more details. So you say, I'm going to ship from Chicago to Pittsburgh. And then it tells you, okay, given that what you want, the recommended provider is DHL. And so you can sort of see, you can test the agent you built. And over the course of about 3 minutes of this video, you actually built a new agent to handle logistics. And so you can sort of see if you're at a company and you want to add new capabilities like this, it's very easy to do and build you on top of what you have already. So now you have a 41st agent on top of the 40 that we provide, and it's included in the library there. So that's kind of the example. Over the course of a few minutes, you can build your own agents. And so the goal behind this is that you can actually extend easily what you need to build here. So on top of that, though, you say, well, let me first show you how it works. So basically, by extending on this, you have our applications in the light blue at the bottom. You actually go up to SAP Building of Joule Studio, which is where we showed you building your own custom agents. And now your custom agents can interact above into the purple section. You see the arrows up. You're actually fully immersed into the other agents that Joule has. So in the future, if you're using one of the Joule agents in supply chain and you ask a question about a package, it knows that you've created, once you register this logistics agent, hey, you're actually asking about the status of a package. This logistics agent has the skills to find out what the answer is. It'll call it and give you the answer. So this is just to show you how you can quickly integrate into our system. So I mentioned extensibility. What I showed you was the third one, custom agents, how you build additional agents. You actually have different ways, different levels of customization. From the least or most simple is basically you can add configurations. You may have specific parameters you change, and you can do that. The second one is using Joule Studio to add custom fields. Field extensibility may be like, we have city, state, zip. Maybe you have county you want to add to your system. Doing that's pretty easy. A little more difficult is what we did here, where we custom agents, which still is pretty easy to build. And finally, the far right is Joule Studio's third-party agents. And this is kind of leveraging A to A. And I'll talk about that in a bit and how we connect there. But before I do that, I want to talk about how in the process of building agents, we can also have agents also build agents as well. And this is kind of an interesting thought of like, how do you have your agents assist you to build new agents? And what you're seeing here is basically, the way it works is you basically create a system that you interview people that are product experts. So you ask the question and says, hey, what do you do to order new laptops or new machines? And this person says the process starts with a laptop request. Basically, your manager performs checks sequentially, and then it's approved or not approved. And so you can see after you say it in natural language, we can create a process visualization of that. There's a flow, right? Person asks a question, I check to see if they're eligible, and I check to see if they have budget, and then I check to see if it's sustainable, and you're done. And so basically, in natural language, this person was able to, John here in this example, was able to give you the process and way to order a laptop from your company. So that's the first step. After you do interviews, here we did 2 interviews with John and another person named Max, we can evaluate to see how the process works. So we interview multiple people, and there's a slight difference. In this one, you'll see that in the sustainability, Max didn't comment about it, right? So we can actually quickly go talk to Max and say, what's your sustainability policy? Is it the same as John's? If it is, then we're done there. After that, you can go to the tool mapping case, basically saying, okay, now you have a flow, but how do you know if someone's eligible? So this eligibility check has a question. I don't know what tool to use. Well, every company has their own database, right? And so here you say, okay, open this eligibility check and pick the right tool necessary. So here you have a tool called Asset Master Data Verifier. And with that tool, it can check within the company if you're eligible to buy a laptop, whether it be a 3-year policy or 2-year policy, whatever your company does. So now you have this tool and says, okay, now this tool process says access to this product. This is where you go to determine eligibility. And then when you finish this process, you go to the next step of basically looking at these agents and saying, this is now available for you to use. So through interviews, through cleaning up, making sure all the policies fit, you can actually add this other agent, and it's added to this list of other agents that exist. So again, this is another case of another way to build agents. You have agent out of the box, you have agents you can build yourself with Joule Studio, and you can also interview and talk to people, personas, and get agents built automatically this way as well. So many different ways to do it. And so in this example, what I just showed you is basically this. The interview process, it leads to understanding of the process, and then you need to actually help map the tools, of course. Sometimes the systems don't know which tools you use. But once you have all of that together, your customized agent is done. So this is just another way to do it. Okay? So then, as I mentioned, these are ways you can build with the SAP ecosystem, but sometimes you may want to use other systems. You know, we know that people use other agents, other systems, and we don't want to force you to use SAP. We want to make sure you're as productive as possible working together with our partner companies. And so this whole idea of multi-agent collaborations has evolved over time. I think many of you know what MCP is. Have you heard of MCP? Raise your hand if you heard of it. I think some of you heard of it. Most of you heard of it. It's basically a way to standardize a protocol of access, right? You can wrap an MCP server around some of your APIs. You get access, people can access it quickly. The next thing was a task handover, right? Agents, instead of agents providing actions, they can be tools as well, meaning that if I'm asked, let's say earlier in the CX, customer service example, if I'm asked to book a flight for my customers, the CRM tool doesn't do that. CRM tool says, I actually know another tool, Concur, that actually can do it for you. So these agents can actually hand over tasks. And then finally, at last point is the collaboration, where you have a CRM agent talking to a travel agent, and they can go back and forth. And you say, hey, look, I need to get to New York, Chicago, and LA. And the travel agent says, here are the flights. And this person comes back and says, oh, I actually checked. This customer is not available that day, or this customer is traveling. And so it can be a back and forth. It's not just a one-shot process. It's an iterative process where you negotiate agent to agent, the same way humans would as well. You can imagine, the way I tell people is like 10 years ago, as you can imagine your CRM, your sales specialist talking to one of your travel agents. The interaction in the email chain, which could be 4 or 5 different turns, can be done all automatically now. And that's kind of the amazing power of these technologies. Right? Basically, instead of it being a single shot of, book me a flight to LAX, comes back and says, hey, I can't do that. There's no flights there. Usually a conversation's over, right? But in real life with humans, you say, oh, okay, I can't go to LAX, I can go to Burbank or somewhere else in LA. And so basically, this whole iterative process happens with agent-to-agent communications. And so how does this work practically speaking in interoperability? We have inbound agents and outbound agents, meaning that people can access our agents from outside, and we can actually bring in agents the other way as well. So in this diagram, you can look at the full circle. Let's look at the bottom portion first. Basically, if you have an agent you built for yourself in your company, and you want to put it into Joule, we talked a little bit about how you do it, right? You create an 8A server, and the Joule skill picks it up. And so in Joule, it says, okay, I know you have an extra skill capability. We can now access it. I mentioned org chart agent or something. You can create something like that yourself. We can access it inbound to us using the 8A protocol. On the other hand, we're in the process of building the agent gateway, which lets us enumerate all the agents we have. So if you're, say, you have agent and you're orchestrating a process, and you want to actually access, let's say, our Concur travel agent, you can actually make a call and say, hey, I need to book a flight. Can I get Concur to respond? In that case, our agent gateway just gives you information right away because you know what agent you want. If it's more complicated, saying, hey, I actually have a more difficult question of supply chain, but I know that SAP can solve it, it would then call Joule, and Joule would help orchestrate the process. So there's two ways to access our agents inbound. One is if you know exactly what you want, then you can use the agent gateway and just call it what you want. But if you don't know what you want, Joule can help orchestrate the process. And that's kind of how interoperability works. And the value behind this is that there's just a whole lot more opportunity where you can actually access agents throughout the entire ecosystem of many, many companies. And we're actually working on, we're not only people who are supporting this, but a lot of people are supporting this 8A protocol. And so it makes it a lot easier for end customers to get things done. And so, in terms of like extending code-based frameworks, I would mention that, since we're here at reInvent, we're working with AWS in several things. One thing we're working on is using Strands SDK, connecting with Light LLM. Light LLM is particularly good at connecting with many different code-based agent frameworks, and one of them is Strands. So you can sort of see on the Kima runtime on the left-hand light blue box, you have your Strands agent, which I've highlighted in red. And so Strands agents works with the Light LLM. And then it connects to the right-hand side with this purple box that circles, this generative AI hub, which is where we actually have our 40+ large language models you can access. Amongst the 40 large language models, we have some we proxy outside. In the bottom right, you'll sort of see the Amazon Bedrock. We actually proxy and access Amazon Nova models, as well as the Anthropic Cloud models and others, Titan as well. And so we actually have the ability to actually connect to 40+ LLMs, including all the ones that AWS supports. And so this is kind of an example of how you can actually integrate different code-based frameworks. This one's AWS Strands. Now I want to show you how we use Agent Core, which is AWS's agent framework, and Joule together in A2A. This is a real demo that was created. And the idea is basically we're looking at how we look at different disaster relief scenarios. And in these scenarios, there's the areas that have been affected by floods, and there's an Agent Core agent that understands information on floods, and we want to figure out how to help with the relief effort. Okay? So the question is like, what regions have been affected by floods? And so quickly, you can sort of see here in Joule analysis, Joule orchestration, it says there's an Amazon Agent Core agent that can do this. So by A2A, we call Amazon Agent Core agent and ask about the flooded regions. And it gives you Miami and a bunch of other regions. Okay? And so the idea behind this is that we could pick any of these, but let's suppose we want to focus on Miami. So we can say, okay, Miami is the one that's most affected. So let's spend a little bit of time looking more there so we can ask more questions about it. So we can ask Agent Core again, hey, tell me about what help do they need, what supplies do they need? And so then it comes back and says, some of the things they need, and it gives you a whole list in a second. But one thing they need is water, and we're going to focus on water. It's running in real time, so in this demo, so it'll take a second or two. So you see here, it gives you different issues of like life jackets, water, clean drink water, mobile command centers. But we'll focus on water. But before we focus on the water, I want to say, if you're not sure we're actually using this, we can actually go underneath the hood and take a look at what's happening. And this is what I'll show you next, that if you look, you can sort of see that Agent Core agents are activated. This is looking at CloudWatch. If you use that for AWS, you can sort of see the calls are being made. The 4 calls have been made there. So calls have been made. So we're actually indeed working between Joule and Agent Core. And now let's look at clean drinking water, okay? Let's figure out how to handle clean drinking water. So far, Joule's been using Agent Core. Now we're going to use S4 within SAP to actually look at provided suppliers. Look at S4 and determine which of my approved suppliers can support Miami at this point in time. We get 2 responses back saying these are 2 possible suppliers. The first one has been approved for specific reasons. The second one's good too as well. And I can say, look, given the supplier ID, we'll just make an order for Oriental Labs, Inc. And so it says, okay, place a purchase order. And then the order is made. And again, this is all a real demo, meaning that we actually did connect with Agent Core. And to show you that we did that, we can actually go into our purchase order product UX and see. You do a search for that purchase order, you'll see it's there. You see it there? And so the main goal is that showing you that you can actually have different agents collaborate with each other, right? And so this is just a quick demo to show you how it works. Okay, so we talked about agents, and I think that managing agents can be easy, it can be hard. People might say, well, how does this work? These demos are obviously easy because there are few agents in a universe. So managing a single agent is easy, right? Let's say I have a sourcing agent, it's like one monkey in a zoo, right? But then all of a sudden you have other agents. When you have other agents, it gets a little more crazy, right? Like, it's the same idea if I say, hey, book a flight, right, and I have a Concur agent, nothing else, right? But if I actually have a bunch of different travel agencies, then you need to figure out book an agent using my company's preferred agency, Concur or whatever, right? And so basically you need to do a little bit more. But in general, how do you handle this? Well, we actually have a process to handle these wild agents by having a zoo of sorts. And basically this AI agent zoo we call is basically the idea that we organize through LeanIX Agent Hub different agents into different groups: finance, human resources, supply chain, customer experiences. And so by doing so, we can actually help provide better context and segmentation to make it easier for you to access your agents. And so by using this tool, as I mentioned, LeanIX AI Agent Hub, you can access all the agents in one place, but not just SAP agents, it also can access third-party agents and custom agents as well. So you build your own agent, custom agents are there. You have a third-party agent we talked about, like Agent Core or anyone else, we can also have it there as well. So all of that is available there. Okay? So we're trying to make it as easy as possible. You know, the reason I'm talking about how making it easy is you can sort of imagine in the initial case of a few pages, it's kind of like when the internet started, right? A couple of URLs came out. I don't know if you remember. You probably memorized them. Maybe you go ESPN.com for sports or whatever. There's 3 or 4 sites. You just memorize the URL. But after it became 1,000 URLs, you went with the search engines, right? And this is the same thing with agents. Initially, you might use like 3 or 4 of your favorite agents. Over time, you might use hundreds of agents. So you need to use something like LeanIX Hub to track the agents you're using. So quickly to summarize the work on to basically our vision of agents. There's 3 parts again, right? The first part again is we want to empower businesses with these pre-built agents. We have 40 agents that are already out of the box by the end of the year. We want to democratize the development, make it easy for you to develop on top, right? So the idea I said, Joule democratizes business applications by letting users access with natural language. We also here for developers democratize agent development using Joule Studio. And then finally, we actually want to make sure you can use the full agentic ecosystem, so we support A to A as well, so that you work outside as well. And so you heard, you know, in the morning, Matt Gardner was talking about democratizing through platform, right? AWS creates a big platform. For business applications, SAP, we create the software on top to also make it easy for people to use. One other thing we've done actually is use AI assistants. I want to explain again. We talked about how you have the LeanIX AI Agent Hub shows you, what type of agents you have. And that's for humans very valuable. It helps us to see how it's organized. But machines also sometimes need context as well. If you say, hey, approve this process, if you ask a question to Joule that's very vague, it might not know what you want to approve. But what it can do is look at the AI assistants, which we announced at SAP Connect in October. We can know what persona you're in or what lines of businesses you're working on and use that as a grounding function of where you are. By doing so, we can scope down the work. If you're a finance professional, if you want an approval, it would be something that your CFO might approve. If you're in procurement, it could be a purchase you're approving. For supply chain, whatever's appropriate, these AI assistants help you scope down kind of your universe of agents. As I mentioned earlier, you have a zoo of a bunch of animals in a zoo. It's very hard to know, but if you know you're looking for giraffes, you can get a better answer, what you're looking for. So basically, this is the same thing here. And so Joule agents, as I mentioned, both visually for humans through LeanIX or through our AI assistants can actually help you organize and segment the different agents that you have to deal with. And so the one thing you may want to do, if you're interested in our agents, we have a QR code here as well as a URL. I think this will also be available offline as well, so you can actually certainly have access to it afterwards. Just wanted to share this before I move to the next section. So the one thing that we do is SAP and AWS have worked together for a long time. We have a partnership for years. And so one of the things that we decided to do is basically to help accelerate the GenAI success for customers. We power the software and we scale on AWS. And the idea is that we have this collaborative agreement where customers can actually make a request and have us help you accelerate your onboarding. And so we have, obviously our track record. We have more than 16 years of working together. We have a lot of industry and technical expertise. And then we have this global reach. And so the idea is that you can reach out and this unique path lets you get started fast and also is subsidized by us in AWS. How does it work? So basically, you apply to get into the program, you have an idea, and once you have your program, we approve it, idea can be accelerated to production. So innovation comes through SAP business processes. We can actually, as I mentioned, scale it through AWS. The adoption, you can run your AI through our environment with built-in safeguards. We have obviously enterprise-grade compliance through AWS and through SAP capabilities and the security that you've heard about on both sides. And then the agility increases too. You can actually get a lot more done with this. And so the idea is you can get this done in as early as 9 weeks. And so if any of you are saying, hey, look, I'd like to do this, but I just don't have the resources to do it, don't have the ability to do it, this is how you can do it, right? So basically, you make a request, and I'll show you in the next couple of slides how to do it. But the co-innovation process is very structured. We take the first phase of exploration. We look at key business challenges and look at use cases. And so basically, you say, hey, I have a big challenge, a big pain point in my job, my company, and this is what it is. Make sure it works. And then we ideate this use case discovery. We say, hey, through workshops with customers together with AWS and SAP, let's figure out how to solve this problem. And then we can have an architect come in and help architect the right design, and then we can build it. And so this whole process is actually assisted by us in AWS. You can use SAP's Generative AI Hub, which is our solution of the 40+ large language models I mentioned earlier. Use Amazon Bedrock's capabilities, and then also Amazon Nova's foundation models as well. And then finally, phase 5 is the implementation with all the security monitors and guardrails in place. So basically, this is a 5-step process. The first 4 steps can pretty much be done in about 9 weeks, as early as 9 weeks if you're working quickly, and you can actually need 4 more weeks to deploy. So this is a very fast process, and if you're interested in doing it, as I mentioned, if cost is an issue, it's a funded project, and I'll show you how to do it in a minute, how to handle it in a minute. But in summary, basically, you have inside out or outside in. Outside in, you have SAP AI Core, which is our capabilities. Inside the core is our Generative AI Hub, which has a bunch of language models included in our Amazon Bedrock's LLMs. And so you can actually access their foundation models from Anthropic, as well as Amazon's native ones, which are Titan and Nova. And in the foundation models, you can actually also access Cohere, Coil Command, Embed, and Re-rank. And so this is the technology you're using. And the process, if you want to do, is you have to contact AI program support at sap.com to get started. And as I mentioned, it'll accelerate your GenAI development, adopt advanced capabilities, and leverage our investments. And this is actually doable if you're in, especially an AWS ecosystem, or if you're trying to decide if you want to use AWS and SAP. This incentivizes you to do that, and we actually help fund, together with AWS, we help support this. So it's actually a great opportunity if you're on the fence of, whether or not to try it or not. Okay, so I'll just summarize kind of what I talked about and some of the things that I didn't talk about, but just the full picture of SAP, and I'll go left to right, top to bottom. So basically, we talked about agent-to-agent interoperability earlier, and MCP server support, right? You can take an MCP server, wrap your APIs, you can get access to it, and then we can actually allow agent-to-agents to expand and extend use and connectivity to different API services. More Joule skills have been built. We have over 2,100 capabilities total, which basically means with natural language, you can actually do a lot of things with our systems across all of our lines of businesses. 2 weeks ago, we announced that our ABAP AI model, which is our fine-tuned domain-specific model, has been made available will be made available inside of our Generative AI Hub for direct access. So any of you are not familiar with ABAP, so our Advanced Business Application Programming Language is our domain-specific language. And so if you use GitHub Copilot or any of these coding tools, it doesn't really have ABAP covered. And so basically, we fine-tuned with over 300 million lines of internal code on ABAP and built a fine-tuned model on ABAP AI. And so that model was available inside the Eclipse IDE for about a year now. But people said, hey, can we have better access to it? And so now we're making it available in GenAI Hub, so it can be accessed in other development environments as well. So if you develop in ABAP, if you have SAP developers, you obviously can please have them use that. Beyond that, we actually are using that tool also for code migration. We are building a custom code migration agent. So any of you working on your RISE migration or updating your code can also leverage this capability as well. Lastly, in the first row, basically these new Joule agents. I mentioned we have 40 by the end of the year, but we have more coming as well. And if you have specific agents that we don't have on our roadmap, you can reach out and tell me. We can actually make sure that we go, customize and make sure you can get what you need. AI assistance, second row, AI assistance on the left-hand side is basically, as I mentioned, the scoping down. The idea that understanding your persona, what persona you are, and what you're working on, can help reduce the scope of what agents are activated. And so the idea is that over time, there'll be more and more agents, and so having the ability to scope down can help us figure out what you need. The middle box is AI Agent Hub, which I mentioned already with LeanIX, where you can actually have all of our Joule agents are there, custom agents that you build can be there, and third-party agents as well. That way you have easy access to all of them. Middle right is what we announced at the beginning of November, which is the first enterprise relational foundation model. So just to make clear, in case you're not familiar with this, basically, people are building language models, and we built the first business tabular model. And so the difference is basically, if I say, hey, it's cloudy outside today, right? I say, it's cloudy outside, I'm going into the closet to pick out a blank. The model can either say, let's say, jacket or umbrella, maybe 60% chance jacket, 30% chance umbrella, 10% chance anything else, galoshes or whatever. But you don't really think about that, right? You just have a language model complete sentences. But it's all probabilistic, right? But when you're talking about like your business processes, you do think probabilistically, right? So, hey, I need to buy enough inventory for Black Friday shopping. How many units of my widget should I purchase? You know, it's also probabilistic, right? Maybe 80% chance you need more than 100 units, 20% chance you need less than 100 units. And so the foundation model takes tabular data, which is like Excel spreadsheets or comma-separated value files for short, and does predictions on them, the same way language is predicted upon with large language models. And we may not think of it that way, but it's the same thing. And so we use the same technology. It's a transformer-based technology. And the reason why we can do it is because we have, as I mentioned, data from all lines of businesses, as you've heard already. And so we can actually apply these foundation model across many different prediction problems. And the value behind this is basically 5 years ago when the first large language models came out, you stopped building narrow AI models. No one builds sentiment classifiers and analyzers anymore, right? You used to actually have to, my jobs a few years ago, I built a sentiment analyzer for a quick serve company. You don't actually ever do that anymore, right? You don't build summarizers. People don't need to have a kind of team of data scientists build summarizers. The same thing happens here with predictive analytics. If you use this RPT1 or rapid one is what we call it, you can actually use one horizontal tabular model to solve a lot of different tabular AI problems. And so we gave it, it's publicly available, the playground, so you should try it out if you haven't seen it. We've given some examples, but you can do a lot of different things, like examples of like extrapolation. Like if you have missing data, I gave you an example about transportation management. If let's say you have a table of like packages and you have some missing data points, like you ship the package to me in Las Vegas, you know, what's the shipper? And you can actually use a foundation model and say, oh, typically speaking, packages shipped to Las Vegas at this time of day or this time of week are delivered by this particular shipper. And so those type of things are available in this model. So definitely try that out. We're going to continue evolving that, but it's basically, I tell you, kind of like a GPT-1 or GPT-2 moment in terms of what happens to type of models. And so this is unique to SAP, so please check it out. Bottom row, I'll start from the left, is our prompt optimizer service. We made that also available, which lets you change prompts when you change different LLMs. This is really valuable, and you can also say, hey, Walter, I use Bedrock only, but it's fine. You can also still use prompt optimization across different Bedrock LLMs as well. If I'm using Nova, and I've been using it for weeks, I modify the prompt. And then tomorrow I say, maybe I should try Anthropic's Claude. Well, if I take the same prompt and move it over, I'm not doing an apples-to-apples comparison. I use the analogy that you may have kids. I don't know if you have kids, but if you have kids, you raise them and you talk to them one particular way. And then once your kid's a teenager, your teenager brings a friend home to talk to dinner, and then you talk to this person the same way you talk to your child, and they don't respond the same way. And you're like, I don't understand why. It's like because each person likes to be responded to differently, right? And believe it or not, we don't want to personify language models, but the idea is language models are trained on data by different, mostly similar public data, but it's all customized to each model, just the same way humans are all different, right? And so if you talk to two different LLMs the same way, you won't get the same answer. So we built this prompt optimizer to make sure we optimize the prompt. That way, you can actually get apples-to-apples comparisons if you're trying to switch LLMs. And that's actually valuable because the next step we've already pre-announced is that we'll help you also decide on LLMs in the future. That way, it'll give you more ROI to say, hey, look, this LLM is more expensive than this other LLM, and give it with the same return accuracies, right? And so basically, that's kind of where we're leading through this prompt optimization. The bullet in between is basically, we have engagement with Joule and Microsoft 365 Copilot is fully integrated because productivity users and M365 and SAP have a high overlap. So within one Copilot, you can access the other one and vice versa. And the value behind that is that, as kind of we talked about agent to agent, is that we don't expect you as users to go to 8 different Copilots, right? I mean, if you wake up in the morning, use one consumer Copilot at home to set your alarm when you're cooking your eggs. You go to work, use another Copilot for your productivity tools, use Joule for your SAP tools, use four more Copilots. It gets old, right? And so we want to make sure we're doing our best to help make it as easy as possible for everyone. And that's why we have this engagement, and why we support 8A as well. And lastly, I think one thing that's also interesting is, there's deep research now. In the past, you ask a question, you got to answer, you're done. Now you can ask more complicated questions, right? Like, hey, I mentioned an example again. I want to book a trip to see my five biggest customers, and I want to make sure it fits my schedule and their schedules. That's actually a deep research type question. We have this capability in Joule, which goes deeper and says, okay, I need to spend 5 minutes to give you an answer, but I'm going to give you the itinerary for that process, right? So that example I gave from the beginning, you can actually apply this and ask these questions now because deep research exists. And deep research means that each of these agents can figure out what it can do, and it also knows what other agents can do. And in this example I'll give you is basically, again, you might say, okay, I want to visit my 5 biggest customers. I go to my CX solution, which is our CRM solution. It says, here are your 5 biggest customers. Here's where they're located. And then you say, okay, go to Concur to find the travel, and here's a potential itinerary. But then before you finish that, you actually go to our engagement with Microsoft, where you look at people's calendars. Are people free? Are you free? Maybe you have Thanksgiving vacation, you have Christmas vacation. So basically, there's 3 different agents, if you're at play here, going back and forth to figure out, okay, I finally figured it out. First week of December, I'm at reInvent. Last week of November, I'm at Thanksgiving. But okay, second week of December, I'm going to go to New York first, and then Miami. Third week, I'm going to be in LA, San Francisco, and then my Christmas vacation happens. So basically, these agents using research to solve a problem that you have can give you the right answer. That kind of summarizes all the different things that we're doing. I know I have a few minutes left, so I can take time for questions. And if you have some, I'll repeat your question.